I still remember the moment my stomach dropped. I was standing in my small Seattle kitchen, scrolling through social media, when a photo popped up. My son Caleb and his wife Brooke, smiling on the deck of a cruise ship, glasses of champagne in their hands, the Mediterranean sun glittering behind them, and all I could think was, how could they? Just weeks earlier, they had begged me for help, swearing Brooke was in danger from debt collectors. I had wired them $13,000, draining what little I had left in savings. I told myself it was family, that it was love, that I could trust them. And then this. Pictures of luxury, while I was left staring at my empty account. That sting. It's hard to put into words. I should probably pause here. My name is Nora Williams, and this isn't just a story about money. It's a story about betrayal, about boundaries, about the brutal things we sometimes discover when we love too blindly. Before I continue, if you're watching, I'd love to know, have you ever loaned money to family and regretted it? Drop it in the comments, or just share where you're tuning in from. Because what started with a dream of Italy quickly turned into the nightmare of my life. Italy had always been my promise to myself. After my husband passed, the house in Seattle felt too quiet, the days too heavy. I started setting aside money bit by bit, telling myself that one day I'd stand beneath the Tuscan sun, breathe in the sea air of the Amalfi Coast, and wander through Rome with no agenda except to live. It wasn't just a vacation, it was healing, a way to prove that even alone, I could still embrace life. I remember sitting at my kitchen table with guidebooks spread out, circling Florence, Venice, Naples. I had a folder with flight details, hotel options, even a list of cafes where I wanted to try espresso. The dates were marked neatly on my calendar, and every time I saw them, I felt a spark of joy. It was more than a trip, it was freedom after years of loss. When I shared my plans with Caleb and Brooke, though, their reactions landed differently. Caleb gave me a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, and Brooke's expression tightened, almost calculating, as if she were weighing something. They made little remarks how expensive travel was on a fixed income, how maybe I'd be safer taking a local trip. I brushed it off, telling myself they were just being protective. But in the back of my mind, their unease lingered. Looking back now, I realized those were the first cracks, small but real, in the trust I thought we shared. At the time, though, all I could see was Italy waiting for me, the life I had carefully planned for. I didn't know that just one phone call, one frantic voice on the other end, would take that promise and turn it into something much darker. It was a quiet afternoon in Seattle, one of those rare moments when I felt at peace. My calendar still showed the red circle around my Italy dates, and I was daydreaming about cobblestone streets when the phone rang. Caleb's voice came through shaking, frantic, almost broken. He said Brooke had gotten tangled up in gambling, that men were after her, and they needed money immediately, or something terrible would happen. My heart pounded. Part of me froze in disbelief. Brooke gambling debts collectors. It sounded like something from a movie, not my life. But then there was my son, my only child, pleading, desperate. A mother's instinct can drown out reason in an instant. Doubt flickered for a second, but love crushed it just as fast. I opened my laptop, logged into my account, and with trembling hands, transferred $13,000, the exact amount I had saved for Italy. Then I picked up the phone again and canceled my tour. I told myself family comes first, that maybe Italy could wait another year, another lifetime if it had to. I tried to steady my breath, whispering those words in my mind, Italy will wait. I had no idea that just days later, I'd stumble across something that would make those words cut even deeper. The betrayal hit me like a slap I never saw coming. One evening, I sat down with a cup of tea, trying to quiet the ache of canceling Italy. Out of habit, I opened my phone, and there it was. Brooke's social media page, filled with snapshots that glittered like daggers. There she was, in a flowing sundress, standing on the deck of a ship as blue water stretched endlessly behind her. Caleb was beside her, arm around her waist, raising a glass of champagne. Photo after photo, Venice canals, candlelit dinners, sunbathing on a private balcony. The very places I had circled in my guidebooks. They were there, living the dream I had spent years saving for. My dream, stolen and flaunted in curated perfection for the world to see. At first, I couldn't breathe. My hands shook, scrolling, each picture a wound deeper than the last. The story they had spun for me, gambling debts, collectors. Fear it all crumbled in seconds. My son, my only child, had looked me in the eye and chosen luxury over loyalty. The humiliation burned hot. I thought of friends who once warned me I was too generous, too trusting. Maybe they were right. Maybe I had been a fool, but not anymore. Grief gave way to something colder, sharper. Anger. Yes, but also resolve. I whispered to myself that night, staring at their smiling faces on that cruise, I will not be fooled again. And as that vow settled into my bones, I knew this was only the beginning. The lies were deeper than I imagined, and I was about to uncover just how far they went. After the shock of seeing the cruise photos, I couldn't just sit there and stew in my anger. My mind kept circling back to one question. How did they pull this off? That's when I decided I needed proof, something concrete to understand the full scope of their betrayal. I started with my credit card statements, scanning each line with a mix of dread and determination. At first, there were small, almost innocuous charges, restaurant tips, gift shop purchases, but then they snowballed. Luxury excursions booked months in advance, first-class flights, spa treatments, even online transactions linked to gambling sites. Each new discovery felt like another punch, yet it also fueled a grim sense of clarity. Then I remembered that years ago, Caleb had helped me set up my accounts, explaining how to track spending and bills. That meant he had access, not just knowledge, but full control. The realization was chilling. This wasn't desperation. This was calculated. Every withdrawal, every swipe, every online purchase was deliberate, orchestrated with forethought. I printed statements, took screenshots, and organized them in folders. Each piece of evidence built a pattern I could no longer ignore. Brooke's carefully staged social media posts, the dates of the charges, the timing of calls. I could see how meticulously they crafted the story of debt and danger to manipulate me. As I sat there, methodically piecing it together, disbelief turned into steely resolve. My heart ached. Yes, but my mind was sharpening. This was premeditated, not impulsive. My son, my own child, had betrayed me in the most profound way. And now, with the evidence laid bare before me, I knew that uncovering their motives was the next step. I leaned back, exhaling slowly, letting the anger settle into clarity. One thing was certain: I would get to the bottom of this. The lies were deep, and it was time to follow the paper trail all the way to the truth. I went back over every charge, every transfer, every digital footprint Caleb and Brooke had left behind. At first, I couldn't believe it. Small test transactions, just a few $100s here and there, almost to see if I'd notice. Then the pattern became undeniable: luxury cruises, flights, spa packages, all meticulously timed. all justified with a story that Brooke was drowning in gambling debt. The more I dug, the colder it got. Caleb had used the very trust I'd given him years ago when he helped me with my finances. He had full access, full knowledge, and he manipulated it all to create the perfect alibi. Each bank transfer, each credit card slip screamed premeditation. This wasn't about survival or urgency, it was entitlement. They'd crafted a narrative to make me feel like I was saving them from disaster, when in reality, they had orchestrated every step to take what was mine. I felt shock, then a creeping clarity. The betrayal wasn't impulsive, it was calculated, deliberate, and cruel. My own son had staged the entire story, weaponizing my love and concern against me. Sitting in the quiet of my kitchen, staring at the evidence, I realized I could no longer avoid what had to come next. The confrontation was inevitable. I had to face them, not as the unsuspecting mother, but as the woman who now saw everything in sharp, painful clarity. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the stack of receipts and printed bank statements before me, my hands trembling slightly. I loved Caleb, I always had, but love didn't mean I could let this go. Not this time. The betrayal ran deeper than I ever imagined, and I had to prepare myself, both emotionally and strategically, to face it. I took a deep breath and reminded myself this wasn't just about money, it was about my dignity. Years of letting little things slide, of smoothing over lies and excuses, had brought me here. I couldn't afford to be naive again. I methodically organized the document's transactions in chronological order, screenshots of social media posts, the full paper trail of their calculated theft. Each page was a piece of the puzzle, and now I had the clarity to see it whole. In my mind, I rehearsed what I would say, the words I would not let escape into anger, but into measured truth. I thought back to family dinners, to Caleb's earlier kindnesses, to the son I believed I knew. Those memories made my heart ache, yet they also strengthened my resolve. This confrontation wasn't just about exposing wrongdoing, it was about reclaiming my power and setting boundaries that should have been there all along. By the time I stood, documents in hand, I felt the shift inside me. Fear was still there. Yes, the fear of losing him forever, but it was tempered with determination. I would not be silent. I would not be fooled. Every step toward that door carried the weight of love, hurt, and the hard-earned courage of a woman who had finally seen the truth. And now, the confrontation awaited sharp, inevitable, and long overdue. I stepped into their living room, the air thick with an unspoken tension that immediately clawed at my chest. Caleb stood near the sofa, posture rigid, his eyes flicking between me and Brooke, who sat poised and seemingly unbothered, her fingers drumming lightly on her phone. I could feel the weight of their anticipation, their expectation that I would somehow forgive, forget, or be swayed by their usual excuses. But not this time. I drew in a steadying breath and set the stack of receipts and printed bank statements on the coffee table, letting the papers fall in a deliberate cascade. Each one told a story I would no longer ignore. My voice, measured but firm, began to walk them through the timeline, the early test charges, the large transfers, the gambling site payments. I watched Caleb stiffen, saw the micro-expressions of guilt flicker across Brooke's carefully maintained calm. I didn't flinch. I spoke slowly, giving every fraudulent transaction its weight, stripping away the layers of manipulation they had carefully constructed. Caleb tried to interject, raising the familiar refrain, "Family comes first. Mom, we're desperate." But I didn't let the words land. I let the silence hang. And then I spoke the truth with precision, exposing the lies, the premeditated deceit, and the way they had exploited my trust. Brooke's face, which had seemed unreadable, tightened as she realized her rationalizations could no longer shield her. I could feel a shift in the room as the power dynamic inverted. Where once I had felt cornered and manipulated, now I was the holder of clarity. Every glance I cast, every pause I allowed, reinforced that I would not be controlled. The anger and grief remained, simmering beneath the surface, but it was tempered by a growing sense of empowerment. By the end, they were quiet, their usual tactics rendered impotent. I stood, documents in hand, my chest heavy with the weight of betrayal, but resolute. I had reclaimed the narrative, refused the guilt, and drawn a line they could not cross. And yet, as I left the room, I could feel the tension of what was to come. This confrontation was only the beginning. I couldn't believe what I had just heard. The words echoed in my mind, each one a jagged blade cutting through every sense of trust I had left. It's just an advance on her death. Brooke's voice, calculated and casual, followed by Caleb's chuckle, made my stomach drop. My own son, the boy I had raised, speaking about my life and my savings as if they were nothing more than a line item in a spreadsheet. I sat frozen, the papers from the confrontation still clutched in my hands, staring at nothing, my heart hammering in disbelief. The Italy fund, the dream I had nurtured for years, every careful saving treated as disposable, a prelude to some imagined inheritance. It wasn't carelessness. It wasn't desperation. It was entitlement. Cold and deliberate. Memories flashed moments I had trusted Caleb with my accounts. The subtle ways Brooke had encouraged me to lend. The casual warnings I had brushed off. Each memory now felt like a stitch in a tapestry of betrayal. And yet, in the midst of this devastation, a clarity began to harden inside me. The shock settled into steel. I understood their motives, the full depth of their disregard for me, and the cruelty they were capable of. This was the breaking point. I would no longer be a pawn. The betrayal had been laid bare, and I was ready to face the consequences on my terms. Whatever came next, they would see that I was no longer someone to manipulate, and this realization marked the grim but necessary pivot toward justice and dignity. The moment I stepped away from the confrontation, a strange calm settled over me. I knew what had to be done, and there was no room for hesitation. I started by closing all joint accounts, severing the financial lifelines that had allowed Caleb and Brooke access to my hard-earned savings. Each signature, each confirmation click, felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I had thought was lost forever. Securing my finances was just the beginning. I changed passwords, redirected automatic payments, and made sure that my Italy fund, the dream I had nurtured for years, was untouchable. I thought of Caleb as a little boy, how I had held him close during storms and cheered him on in every milestone. The pain of betrayal cut deep, but it was intertwined with the understanding that love alone cannot justify enabling manipulation. I set boundaries that were as painful as they were necessary. I informed Caleb and Brooke that my support, both emotional and financial, was no longer available. My voice did not shake. I did not scream. I acted with unwavering clarity, the quiet power of dignity radiating in each measured word. Their stunned silence spoke volumes, and for the first time, the tables were turned. Walking away, I felt the weight of sorrow mingled with empowerment. The mother who had given everything was now a woman who demanded respect. I allowed myself to grieve not for the money, not even for the dream of Italy alone, but for the trust that had been shattered. Yet, in that grief was resolve. I carried with me a hard-earned truth: reclaiming your life sometimes means making the hardest choices with grace. As I closed the door behind me, I felt the subtle shift pain still lingering, but my dignity intact, and the consequences of betrayal left squarely in their hands. Sitting here now, reflecting on everything that's happened, I feel a mix of exhaustion, sorrow, and strangely, a quiet strength. I think about the years of trust I placed in Caleb and Brooke, the sacrifices I made, the dream I nurtured of walking the cobblestone streets of Italy, and how all of it was manipulated. It hurt deeply, and it still stings when I recall the moment I realized my generosity had been exploited. But through that pain, I've learned something invaluable. Self-respect is not negotiable, and boundaries are a gift you give yourself, even when it means standing apart from those you love. I've come to understand that walking away from toxic relationships isn't a failure. It's survival, and it's courage. It's recognizing when love is being used as a weapon and choosing your dignity over the false comfort of complicity. Each of us has the power to reclaim our lives, even when betrayal comes from the ones closest to us. I want anyone listening who has felt manipulated, ignored, or drained by family to know they are not alone, and that it's okay to put yourself first. There's an incredible resilience that emerges when you refuse to be a victim, when you calmly, thoughtfully, reclaim your agency. I'm still grieving parts of the past, but I'm also proud of the woman I am now, one who refuses to be silenced, one who can love without losing herself. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your experiences too. Share in the comments where you've found strength or how you've navigated difficult family dynamics. If it touched you, consider liking and sharing the video to support this channel. Your stories matter, your voices matter, and together, we can find comfort, connection, and the courage to protect our hearts while still moving forward.